creators or as scientists and innovators and people who are about hard facts and numbers? How do we communicate with people that don't, in ways that translates and shows them the impact of the ocean? Thank you very much for that, Monica. I'm going to move right along to Juan Emilio Sala from the CONICET. He's a CONICET researcher and coordinator of the Scientific Advisory Council of the Ministry of Science, Technology and Innovation of the Argentine nation in relation to the Pampa Azul initiative in Argentina. Thanks, Juan. Over to you.
Thank you, at sea. In July 2020, this year, it was relaunched according to the guidelines of the new National Public Administration. The historical objectives were deepening the scientific knowledge as the foundation of policies for the conservation and management of natural commons in our big Patagonian and Argentinian continental shelf, promote technological innovations applicable to the sustainable use of natural commons and the development of industries linked to the sea. And also strengthening the maritime awareness of Argentinian society and support with information and scientific presence our sovereignty in our country in the Southwest Atlantic area. This is a very important objective for this theme session. But I need to talk about how to do that, how to work in a conceptual framework. And this is the main issue in this talk. The Pampa Azul initiative is an excellent example of science policy interface like IPCC or IBES on a national scale, also with regional and international scope. Pampa Azul also acting as a boundary institution or organization, and boundary institutions are organizational systems, programs, or institutional arrangements that facilitate interaction between science and technology producers and users and stabilize the science policy interface. And how we can do this in terms of methodologies, we need to embrace transdisciplinary research, and we will construct in this initiative knowledge and public policies by interviewing various scientific disciplines and other types of knowledge like traditional, local, institutional, among others. But we need to define some boundary objects that is another tool for work in this kind of post-normal science. The boundary objects are distinguished from simple data through their use, facilitating stabilization between two social worlds, big different worlds. Climate modeling, for example, or climate policy. And some examples of boundary objects are climate scenarios, ecosystem service concept, among others. But we need to embrace, if we want to transform our way of or do the research relating to our Atlantic, from the normal program of science to post-normal science. This is a proposal by Funtowicz and Rabbets, and it's both a conceptual framework and a practical approach to problematic situations that we all have in our Atlantic, where the stakes are high and the science is ascertained. The need to face the end of the Cartesian dream, as proposed by Funtowicz and Rabbets. If you look in the figure, you can see Pampa Azul is like in the middle of the pure applied research to post-normal, the construction of post-normal science. We are working to go to this goal. To finish, I need to give you some reflections, and we need to really want, if we really want to intervene and positively impact in and coastal ecological systems, in ecosystems, and in the people who make them up, we need to move toward public policy ready science. This is a new concept to say we need to create another kind of science. This is a very important kind of science the normal science program that has now reached its zenith. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, normal science and including practical methods in the ocean. Thank you very much for that, Kwan. We'll catch up again in the discussion. I am going to move on to Michael B. Jones from TMA Blue Tech, also from the United States of America. Over to you, Michael B. Jones. Thank you.
Great. Good morning from San Diego, California. I am the president and founder of the largest and most active ocean technology cluster in the United States. But we're very active internationally, and I'll come back to that in a minute. Our mission statement is to promote sustainable, science-based ocean and water industries. So we bring together both ocean and water. So what is a cluster? If you're not familiar, there's a very well-established concept of a business cluster as a concentration of industries. And then you convert that into an organized cluster when you realize that has developed, and you try and bring both effective leadership and funding together. And we believe that blue tech clusters in particular are critical to promote the triple bottom line. And in our case, we have both tech, service, and manufacturing companies that come together. And triple helix clusters, as we call them, bringing together industry, academia, and policymakers are the triple helix. And we think they should be created region by region, country by country. And I want to do a shout out to the EU. Their European Cluster Collaboration Platform is a great organization. This is what we believe clusters do. They bring together academia, education, what we call blue STEM. Industry is the second leg of the stool. The third leg of the stool is policy. And where we all overlap, because we have different needs as stakeholders, is understanding what the problems are, economic growth, and of course, jobs. And that is very important to go forward. Clusters are important to promote a growing sustainable blue economy. Some call it a quadruple helix by throwing in the public. Some call it a quintuple helix when they put in capital and entrepreneurs. But essentially, those three big stakeholder groups are really critical if you're trying to bring together a cluster. And we think clusters are critical to create blue voices. It is very important to promote ocean research, innovation, economic development, really for that common good. Clusters collaborate in multiple ways: cluster to cluster, cluster to business, business to business, cluster to government, cluster to policymakers. They can work together across joint grants and projects. And very importantly, they can help new clusters develop. What you see here is something we helped put together called the Blue Tech Cluster Alliance, which is 10 of the leading ocean tech clusters in the world that came together to really figure out how we could collaborate, really be applied in what we do. And you can see in yellow there, knowledge-based ocean and water industries, and collaborate on research and development initiatives. So this is not supposed to be a castle with the moat and a drawbridge, but rather our goal is to help other clusters develop. We've been working in Asia and in Latin America. We're all looking out in Africa as well. Just by way of two case studies, we would not have been able to do this without the Blue Tech Cluster Alliance. So clusters get to know industry needs and can coordinate stakeholders. So we went together with two of our cluster partners, Plocan in the Canary Islands, Formosiano, which is the national Portuguese maritime cluster, and then with the AIR Center, Atlantic International Research Center. I know that Miguel Bello will be speaking tomorrow as well. But the four of us got together and said, you know, there's a real need to have places where you can show long duration and long persistence without being too far from a place that can come and pick you up if, God forbid, there is a problem. And so we are in the process of creating essentially long duration, long residence testing facilities and courses. And you can see them here. ARC is our name, Atlantic Autonomous Robotics Consortium. And our goal is to get this started with partners in Porto, in Lisbon, in the Azores, in Madeira, and the Canary Islands, and then later extend south to Cape Verde and on to Africa. We think that this is a very concrete example of something we're trying to do for the Atlantic, but for the world, frankly. Companies need this, governments need this, NGOs need this to find out what technologies are working and figure out what is the very best for their needs. And then finally, our second case study, we have worked very hard in our region. On the right-hand side, you can see a series of things that we've done, including working with our biggest school district across 105,000 students. We're infusing blue tech, but we're really particularly proud that we've helped create during COVID a blue tech ocean optimism curriculum that we hopefully will be using internationally and making that available. We call it Blue Tech Optimism because it includes both ocean and water, and we are going to be raising funding to make sure it gets translated into other languages and again is available around the world. So with that, I just want to thank the organizers. I think the All Atlantic Ocean Research Forum is a great institution, the work that's being done, to the EU, incredible work, to all of you in South Africa. Congratulations on your work. Thank you for allowing me to participate.
Thank you so much, Michael B. Jones. Quite a lot of collaborative work there taking place, but I just want to highlight for me, the deliberate action to look at the ocean is, for me, I think, remarkable and something new that we've gotten from this panel. So thank you very much for that, Michael. I'm going to move on to Deepna Kio. Deepna Kio, who is the chair of the EU Atlantic Strategy Steering Committee in Ireland. Over to you, Deepna.
Thank you. I've just lost my, just bear with me one moment. Can you hear me?
I can hear you, but I cannot see your presentation.
Okay, just give me one moment.
While Deepna is doing that, just to give that shout out to everybody that's watching us via YouTube and watching us via Facebook. Please remember the hashtag for the conversation is AtlanticOr. Over to you, Deepna. Thank you.
Okay, you can see my presentation?
Yes, I can.
Perfect. Okay, good afternoon, everybody, and thank you, Tulil, for the introduction. As you said, my name is Deepna Kio, and having been a member of the Atlantic Strategy Committee since 2017, I have just in the last couple of weeks taken over the job of chairing the group for 2021. So let me begin by thanking Dr. Juara and the Department of Science and Innovation South Africa's team, and Jean-Eric Paquet and the European Commission's Research and Innovation Directorate team for the invitation to take part here today. I come to you from a cold and rainy Brussels. Having had the opportunity to visit South Africa in 2008, I would have loved to be there for this conference, but unfortunately, as for it all, it was not meant to be. So to the Atlantic Maritime Strategy. This is a specific sea basin strategy that was adopted in 2011 to address calls from stakeholders for a more ambitious, open, and effective cooperation in the Atlantic Ocean area. The strategy group identified challenges and opportunities faced in the Atlantic region and was accompanied by the EU's 2013 to 2020 action plan, which set out practical steps to be taken in the then 5 Atlantic member states. In 2017, this committee made up of 4 member states, that is Ireland, France, Portugal, and Spain. It also includes regional representatives and the EU Commission representatives. And we oversaw a midterm review of the action plan to assess its performance and draw lessons from its implementation to pave the way for the future. Based on the findings of the midterm review, notably the potential of the action plan to deliver even more of an impact for the coastal economy, a series of workshops revolving around themes identified as highly relevant for the Atlantic Blue economy were held between September and November 2018 in the member states. As a result of this work, the revised Action Plan 2.0 was adopted just 4 months ago on the 23rd of July 2020. The plan sets out 7 goals under 4 pillars, which focus on collaborative issues that one coastal region and one single state cannot solve alone. The 4 pillars are Pillar 1, ports as gateways and hubs for the blue economy. Pillar 2, blue skills of the future and ocean literacy. Pillar 3, marine renewable energy. And Pillar 4, healthy ocean and resilient coasts. As we begin our work under this new action plan, the committee will work collaboratively with all stakeholders under all pillars to support the delivery of the goals and actions that we have set out for ourselves. The new action plan continues to recognise the vital importance of the international dimension and the fundamental role of research, development and innovation in delivering our goals. The research activities undertaken as part of the Galway and Belém statements and the Atlantic Ocean Research Alliance cut across all 4 pillars. They give this international dimension to the plan and support its implementation by improving an understanding of our understanding of the changing Atlantic Ocean and its effect on coastal communities, and by developing innovative solutions. The Atlantic Strategy Committee hosts an annual autumn conference known as the Atlantic Stakeholder Platform Conference, which took place this year just a couple of weeks ago from Bordeaux in France, as France chaired the group in 2020. At that conference, we hosted the Atlantic Project Awards, which gave recognition to projects in each of the 4 pillar areas, alongside the area of international cooperation. The winner in this area was the EU Atlas Horizon 2020 project, whose goal is to improve our understanding of complex deep sea ecosystems and their associated species, including those that are new to science. The project epitomizes international cooperation as it draws on stakeholders from 12 nation states, 12 universities, 5 SMEs, and 4 national research centres. Ireland will continue the tradition of presenting Atlantic Project Awards in 2021 and will welcome entries from any or all of the excellent and innovative projects that will be seen here at this conference over the next couple of days. In 2021, we will continue to support the ambition and vision of all our Atlantic partners. In that regard, we look forward to working collaboratively with participants past and present in the Atlantic Youth Ambassador Programme. These ambassadors provide an intrinsic link between our Atlantic regions and our international cooperation efforts, and we will seek ways to support them as they continue to drive change in our communities. I would also hope to explore and develop further linkages and synergies between the Atlantic Strategy, Mission Starfish, and to be part of this broader all-Atlantic Ocean community. The current challenges we face in terms of COVID recovery, ensuring a prosperous and sustainable future for our blue economy, and an ever-changing international landscape demand at this stage, I think that we set ourselves up for success. And I believe that working together, we can provide the solid foundation that is required for that achievement. I hope to welcome at least some of you perhaps to Ireland for the Atlantic Stakeholder Platform Conference next autumn, where a very warm welcome will await you all. For now, please feel free to get in touch if there is anything further you would like to know after the conference or during it as regards the Atlantic Strategy Committee. And thank you for your attention and enjoy the rest of the conference.
Thank you so much, Divna, for that contribution. I like that incentivizing projects through awards. I mean, recognizing people through awards always gets them riled up and gets them into a space where they want to do even better research. So to share all of this with you, because I'm trying to isolate all of the unique points from each and every presentation. And I think from that, it's the incentivizing the projects. And our last panel speaker in Jaula. She's the acting registrar at the University of Namibia in Namibia. Over to you, Hilka.
Thank you so much, and good afternoon, good morning, everybody. Services we get from the oceans, and then we have the social aspect of things where we get the food, fisheries. We have tourism, energy, bioprospecting, spiritual, aesthetics, bequest, and mining, transport, sport. And depending on where a person is coming, is based and what resources they are, these lists can be expanded. So then comes the aspect of governance, which is the process of informed decision making that enables trade-offs between competing resource users so as to balance environmental protection with beneficial use in such a way as to mitigate conflict, enhance equity, ensure sustainability, and allow accountability. So these things all need to be balanced. And it's the art of balancing that somehow becomes a challenge in ensuring that a societal aspect of the ocean sciences is achieved. So that balance, what am I referring to, is such that for the governance of governments to optimize human benefits without compromising the ocean health, there is those two groups where the environmental regulation for sustainability and ocean health comes in with research on the science and how much of science we understand. And then the other side, we will have society, of which they are the resource users. They have well-beings to maintain, and they are doing that for the current generations and the future generations. Again, the art of balancing things within these three aspects becomes the question that we as countries along the Atlantic or anywhere else is coming in. For now, we are seeing how climate change is driving the green side quite down, and how that leaves societies in the future is something that requires to be considered. And now governments are at a task to see what can be done so that there is not a toppling of one side over the other. As such, I'm now pointing out to quite a number of aspects that perhaps are worth considering from various angles. And I'm saying that for most frameworks for the ocean industries, when now society or governments are coming in to make use of the resources or make use of the Atlantic, is such that the frameworks are largely determined internationally, and local authorities need to cascade them to domesticate them and come up with their own frameworks. In a number of cases, or for societies which are still getting to develop their industries, they find themselves in a top-down approach rather than the bottom-up, whereby they have to operate within the confines of those frameworks. And at what point, how much that limits the potential, or how much their input has influenced those frameworks, is a pendulum that sometimes is into how much of the other societies or coastal countries whose input has not necessarily informed such frameworks, but then they have to live within those frameworks. Those are some of the matters that becomes part of the discussion on how societies can either benefit or play their part. And then it's an aspect of science, knowledge, such that in the absence of science, policymakers may operate towards a consensus view rather than a sound understanding of the underlying science. That again is indicating that the alliance like the one we have here is allowing to bridge that gap, whereby policies are not made by merely reaching consensus, but they are taking aspects of science. And science in areas where it's lacking, it's important that efforts are coming together so that such is that gap is bridged. And then again, the third one I'm highlighting here is such that those who are ahead from where we are, and I'm again bringing Namibia as a case in study, they commence with the series of national marine policies, roadmaps, and targeted societal initiatives. And those ones included the visions for ocean economy, the guiding principles, the policy goals, set objectives, and investment in research. Again, in the aspects where it's necessary that we move forward to again get the art of balancing these three aspects for the betterment of society's intake or uptake of the Atlantic resources. It's again another area that becomes a hurdle to go through for countries or societies that are yet to benefit fully from the Atlantic and make it a sustainable resource that the coastal countries have. I am therefore concluding by saying that there is sustainable growth potential in a maritime area for the Atlantic countries, and mainly for the Southeast Atlantic countries where things are still to develop to a level of the rest of the Atlantic countries. There is that balance that is needed, and definitely we will be able to do it, and we can make it work. And this alliance has proven that with the engagement with various stakeholders, research for those that are behind can be improved, and those that are able to assist developing countries or countries that have gaps to fill has provided potential to do such. Thank you very much. I think that's what I could contribute to the group, and I will be available for the discussion.
Thank you so much, Hilka. It's a balancing act, this thing, the government, the science, the players in the science space, and the society, and it's about finding that right balance to be able to benefit all of the different players for the benefit of the people. I understand, Hilka. We have exactly 14 minutes to engage, and I'm going to kick it off with a question to Kendra. And the question is asking, how do you engage industry and foster data sharing in the particular sector?
That's a great question. I would say we are at the early stages of the data sharing journey. We are actually right now going through a series of workshops. I think there is a large spectrum of views around open data versus competitive value of data. And so that's it's a bit of an ongoing conversation, but I think we've talked to them about our data strategy and what that should look like, and the importance of finding a way to share data for the success of the cluster. But I would say that there's still a lot of education to do, and that's one of the reasons we've actually just had a first workshop this week. We've got 2 more coming up the rest of this month, and a project called Vitality, which is actually focused on educating around the value of data in particular ocean sectors.
Okay, that's interesting, Kendra, because you're talking about how you're actually offering industry, in some cases, something that they don't even know they need, because you are still having to educate them about the use and the impact of this data that you derive from the ocean. I think that's really, really awesome, and definitely worth replicating in other nations as well. Let's educate to add value to the industry so that we add value as well to the research and the people holistically. Thank you for that. I've got a question that's not necessarily directed to anybody.
May I?
Alexander, you...
Yes, there are two aspects related to development and and climate changes, we need to improve our capacity to internalize, to include the logic, the aspect of climate changes in environmental impact assessment. It's not the case in the developments, and the way the developments will contribute in a positive or negative way to the changes to the situation. And it's really, really important, and it should be supported by science.
And the next question, I think, from an educational perspective, we're going back to explaining the terminology, and the terminology here that we need explained is blue technologies. What is meant by blue technologies? If I remember correctly, Michael B. Jones was speaking about blue technologies.
We talk about both blue STEM and blue tech. So in the larger blue economy, we did a study in San Diego, and we're just getting funding to redo that study. We found 46,000 direct jobs related to the ocean, and of that, about 19,000 related to blue tech. And for us, that's 16 sectors, starting with aquaculture and biomarine and going across to weather and climate change. So it's really the technology leading edge. So we don't look, for example, at maritime recreation as part of our cluster, but the people that create the diving equipment or the people that are driving innovation in vessels, those would be of interest to us. So again, the difference between the larger blue economy and then the more specific technology aspects of it. So our membership is really 100% focused on technology. We have a sister organization in San Diego.
Lead up to that form part of the value chain of what takes place or what research takes place specifically in the ocean. So to the extent of looking at what technologies would be, if there are sensor technologies that are necessary, who's developing those sensor technologies. So the before we get to the ocean, as it were, need to be incorporated from that perspective.
Well, let me take an example. Your last question was a great springboard. We have companies working on find where they are and then get UU. And they're coming up with the ways to understand ocean noise as a pollution source. And that's a relatively recent understanding. So every vessel that moves, marine mammals talk to each other, absent typically big vessels. So our companies are creating technologies that allowing researchers to be more efficient in what they do. One of the first speakers talked about the cost for them of putting a vessel out. Well, autonomous vessels and new and very affordable sensors are what tech companies are developing, sometimes following on from the science. Sometimes they're doing it in their own labs, and then they bring it to academics to work on, because there's a symbiotic relationship of testing, writing about it, finding new interns. So there should be a much better match than I think traditionally there has been. So we're working on the technology edge of getting the information out into blue jobs and creating the solutions.
Wow, okay. All right. Thank you so much for that, Michael. A question here about human capital development. And I think from the session we've heard about the high school or curriculum reform elements. We've heard as well about the educating people. What are some of the informal ways that we can educate society to aid them in better understanding the ocean and the benefits of it, outside of the formal structures of universities and academia and school and so on? Anybody from the floor can go for that.
So So maybe just a quick comment on that. So we had actually Amazon Prime is doing an episode on Canada's ocean supercluster. So that will help tell the story to broader Canadian public in terms of the opportunity that exists in ocean. We also have, separate from the supercluster, but part of the ocean literacy. So just raising awareness again around for broader Canadian public in terms of both the opportunity, the risks, the conversation, and making it a broader conversation than just those that have a particular interest or within the schools, which is all important, but how do we get to the broader benefits to the society as a whole?
I think there's quite a number of things you mentioned there, because then there's engaging with broadcasters and being a little bit more creative about how you're reaching your people, perhaps in more resource limited settings. You're looking at things like radio and so on, and using the internet, these ideas and this knowledge to the greater population.
I think digital, sorry, it's very quickly, I think digital is incredibly important in terms of being able to get be able to get the message out. So we story.
Tools to do that.
Kwan, what is
it? All the process, implicating all the people through the process of co-construct this knowledge with the people. And this is the way to involve the people in the process and to embrace the results all around the society.
And Kwan, how are you attracting the people? How are you attracting them?
Well, I think marine science and also marine environments are quite attractive. I think it's quite enough. But the people now, it's the people, the common citizens are improving their needs to approach to science, and also this is important to fuel with social medias and internet and different approach to approach these people interested in science to do this kind of projects. For example, with marine litters.
Okay, all right. Thank you, Kwan, for that. Very passionate. I think if we love something and we're passionate about it, we just always assume that everyone else just loves it and everyone else is going to come on board. And I think that's really awesome. It's awesome energy. And there's a question here from one of our speakers, Hilka, on how to cascade international framework to regional framework. And she believes we need input from this forum. So in other words, Hilka is asking from a regional perspective, how do we cascade the frameworks that are already existing internationally, regionally? Any takers for the migration of frameworks, as it were, from international community to the regions?
I can at least say that that's a role that clusters often play. And so we work across international lines with our various cluster partners. And it's one of the reasons that we're working right now with Taiwan, Korea, and a prefecture in Japan to create clusters. We've been working with Brazil, particularly the Brazilian Navy, who's trying to promote clusters. And with that comes education, the opportunity for citizen science. We've been in touch with people in Tunisia, in Kenya, and trying to help in South Africa as well. Whenever we or any of our cluster partners through the Blue Tech Cluster Alliance hear about a cluster that's in formation, we reach out to see if we can assist. And part of that is research, part of that is education, part of that is transmitting portion of what the Blue Tech Cluster Alliance was created to do.
And Michael, the emphasis there is the regions must reach out. Is that the emphasis there?
Well, the answer is yes, but of course we're trying to find them. If we read about someone, so we, for example, just put on our 12th annual Blue Tech Week, and we had 660 people from 37 countries. We reached out to over 50 clusters or clusters in formation around the world and invited them to virtually participate. We spent a whole day, every year we spent a whole day with clusters trying to let them understand what we see a cluster doing and how they can benefit from existing clusters. So the whole idea is, again, if you cut me, you would see blue and you would see clusters, because I believe that clusters are critical, region by region, country by country, to really bring together education, academia, government, and industry so that they're rowing in the same direction. And when we as a cluster that exists find a cluster or a region that wants to create a cluster, we reach out if they haven't reached out to us, but we hope they will reach out. So our goal is to help create clusters around the world. Again, I'm not just talking about TMA Blue Tech. I'm talking about my third slide, which was the Blue Tech Cluster Alliance. This is something that we talk about how we can assist.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much for that, Michael. As you're speaking about the workshops that you host, and as Kendra as well is speaking about some of the workshops that they host, I wonder if the forum itself shouldn't have some kind of a portal where all of the partners can go to and see what workshops are taking place, even within the platform or the forum itself, to enable people to gain the knowledge internally, to increase their collaborative efforts internally within the forum. I'm not sure if that's already taking place, but from the question that Hilker is asking and the different solutions that have been presented, I think that might be worthwhile. At this particular moment, I'm going to end questions and end the discussion and thank all my panelists for their very engaging contributions and their very informative contributions. And we will have a bit of a stretch break now, and we will come back at exactly 4:51 on my watch, or at least 4:52 now, in 10 minutes. And during that time, we will be airing some videos of the All Atlantic projects that will also be talking and giving us contributions after the 10-minute walkabout. So get comfortable, make your coffee, and be back in 10 minutes. Thank you very much. See you in 10.
We have been amazed at just how diverse and how interconnected these Atlantic ecosystems are. They are far more abundant, they are far more productive, and they are far more vulnerable than we ever thought before. Every time we put a camera into the deep Atlantic or we take a sample from the deep sea, we discover something new, and we mustn't forget that. That highly connected and intricately connected Atlantic Ocean is changing. Potentially the connections between ecosystems and species are being reduced. We have to understand the implications of that if we're going to have sustainable human activities in the future.
That opportunity to learn more about life in the ocean, that we may see where we are needed as young scientists.
The deep Atlantic is a precious and delicate place. It may be very large, but it's really varied. And we have to have the right science to conserve those places into the future.
Aquaculture is an effective way to produce more food from the ocean. However, to be more sustainable, aquaculture should expand beyond fish farming and include lower trophic species that have a low environmental impact. Funded by the EU's Horizon 2020 Research and Innovation Programme, Aquavitae aims to increase the production of sustainable low trophic species. These are groups of plants or animals that belong to the lower levels of the food chain, such as macroalgae, oysters, mussels, sea urchins, sea cucumbers, and abalone. Aquavitae will provide safe and healthy food for people, develop new biosensors to further improve productivity, analyse the profitability of aquaculture producers, provide advice on policy and governance, and build a community throughout the Atlantic. Aquavitae, unlocking the potential of sustainable aquaculture in the Atlantic Ocean.
One of the biggest problems that society faces today is that of climate change, in particular the role of the emissions of carbon dioxide from burning fossil fuels and how these gases are accumulating in the atmosphere and warming our planet. Researchers
the ocean is taking up, as well as 70% of the excess heat that is generated by the accumulation of those emissions in the atmosphere. So understanding the Southern Ocean, how it works, why it does such a good job of taking up this excess CO2 is really important, and what the sort of tipping points are on the ability of the Southern Ocean to keep on doing that in a climate that's changing. SOCO was sort of developed to try and look at that. We've taken advantage of our geographical positioning, so we kind of have decided to take a multidisciplinary approach to trying to understand the Southern Ocean.
Annually, researchers deploy gliders in the sub- and Arctic Ocean to measure stratification, or the vertical layering of the ocean. By using high-res ocean biogeochemical models, scientists are able to investigate physical and biogeochemical mechanisms that may explain the sensitivity of the Southern Ocean carbon cycle to climate change.
ocean gliders are kind of a bit like drones that you see in the atmosphere all the time. They are profiling the ocean. Inside the glider, they can change their buoyancy. So the glider, which looks a bit like a plane, makes itself heavier so that and it makes itself lighter, so it rises. So the glider does, and it goes down to 1,000 meters depth. When it comes back to the surface, it has a iridium mast, which is essentially, it tells us where it is, and it sends some data back to us. So we are able to then send some commands in return to it and say, please sample like this or sample like that. Gliders have multiple different sensors on them, which is great because it means that we can look at multiple different processes happening simultaneously together.
Learnings from the research are used to support the National Research Consortium that is developing a South African Earth Systems model with a special focus on improving climate projections in the Southern Hemisphere. Beyond the science and technology, SOCO offers young South African scientists from historically disadvantaged institutions a stimulating, challenging, and inspiring platform from where to build their skills in numerical modeling, machine learning, big data science, and analyzing complex systems in order to grow experts in this field.
Be able to ask good questions. I think that's what science is about, because knowledge is everywhere. I think that being able to distill what's a good question and what's not a good question, and when you're faced with a complex problem, where do you start? And how do you think about that? So I think there's been a sort of a intellectual development about how to think about questions, and also meeting people that are very big in
and build an interdisciplinary approach to explain the links between carbon and climate. The program has developed several new facilities specializing in robotics, biooptics, biogeochemistry, geotraces, and CO2, and in turn have created opportunities to design and innovate in an uncharted field.
Our research niche is understanding fine-scale dynamics, and for that we needed capability that was able to make the measurements and the scales that we needed. Because we've sort of now got to the point we've achieved the goals of using it in support of our research, we're now expanding beyond the research needs to address societal needs outside the science. We have developed a new PCO2 sensor to measure CO2 in the ocean, which is probably one of the best ones available globally. That was developed here by our engineers, and we've tested it in the Southern Ocean. We are using it as part of our research. We are now starting to market it globally, and we've sold our first 2 units to an Ocean Institute in Germany. So that's an area where we've gone from, again, the value chain of going from basic research towards innovation. And that innovation is about developing our South African intellectual property, really, and using that as a platform to start local manufacturing of advanced high-tech equipment.
Thank you so much for those videos of the projects taking place within the Atlantic. There clearly is a lot of work taking place, and it all looks really exciting. And particularly for me, as a molecular biologist and virologist, I'm really enjoying the new terminology and learning about the ocean, in the ocean and the ocean economy and all that's taking place there. And I suppose we can start with me when we speak about society. To you able to grab something to drink, a coffee, stretch your legs a little bit. We continue with the business of the day, and we get remarks by representatives from all Atlantic partners. And going first is Yona Seleti, and Yona Seleti is the Acting Deputy Director General for Research, Development and Support at the Department of Science and Innovation in South Africa. Thank you. Over to you, Yona.
Program Director, Ms. Tulire Kanyere, thank you. Allow me to acknowledge all the dignitaries present, and sharing this platform with me. In short, all protocols observed. First of all, I wish to congratulate the Belem and Galway statement partners on this historic moment. 2020 is only the third anniversary of the Belem statement. And here we are hosting the third All-Atlantic Ocean Research Forum from shores and coastlines of South Africa. We need to applaud the partners, their scientific communities, and the Atlantic Ocean communities. Secondly, the Third Atlantic Ocean Research Forum is a celebration of both the Belem and Galway agreements on research on the oceans that brings together all the Atlantic communities. This alliance on marine and oceans research shows our seriousness about the sustainable use of the oceans. This Atlantic Research Forum contributes also to the realization of the Belem Statement ambition of promoting mutual benefit by linking research activities in the South Atlantic, Southern Oceans with those of the North Atlantic, and by exploring synergies with other initiatives such as the Interdisciplinary Atlantic Research Agenda, the Atlantic International Research Center, the Strategic Forum for International Science and Technological Cooperation, the European Union Health Observation Monitoring Program, Copernicus, and the Benguela Currents, and many more. The firm intent by the partners is to go beyond policy statements and pronouncement. And this will be illustrated tomorrow as we share with you the joint actions and anchor. The projects demonstrate the determination by the partners to increase the efficiencies in our ocean stewardship by optimizing the appropriate use and sharing of research infrastructures, access to and management of data and data platforms, and further deepening our scientific knowledge of marine ecosystems, the interaction between oceans and climate change, oceans and food, and oceans and energy systems. Esteemed ladies and gentlemen, Atlantic partners, there is only one ocean and it knows no borders. It is the coming together of our joint effort that we can address some of the intertwined challenges that can be addressed through a focus on this resource. We have a responsibility to ensure that the ocean is kept safe for everyone's benefit. What happens in the South Atlantic Ocean affects what is happening in the Indian or Atlantic Oceans and vice versa. Sustainable Development Goal 14 commits us to conserving the oceans and seas and our marine resources and using them sustainably. Our joint efforts are critical for this to succeed. Dr. Mjwaka has already spoken on the decade of the ocean science for sustainable development to support the efforts to reverse the cycle. So I will pass that topic. Investment in the science and innovation is integral to the achievement of South Africa's growth and development objectives. As stated in our National Development Plan, it is key to accelerating sustainable and inclusive economic growth. Ocean and polar research is expensive, and governments are faced with a number of competing social mandates. It is now very difficult for nations to support science for the sake of science. The current COVID-19 pandemic has made society look to science to address social challenges. The All-Atlantic Partnership is squarely based on this idea, and it's bearing fruit. To cement our commitment to the partnership, South Africa is developing a compendium of South African marine research in the Atlantic Ocean, a document that will primarily highlight the activities of the South African marine research community from universities, government departments, national research facilities, science councils, and non-governmental organizations that are involved in the Atlantic Ocean activities. This document aims to enable potential local and international partners to identify possible South African partners, agencies for collaborative activities. Proposed anchor joint activities will be announced tomorrow, and this document will surely assist in ensuring that cooperation leading to the achievements of the goals. In the context of the Atlantic Ocean research, there is an opportunity as well for innovation systems to be expanded. We have already talked about innovation for inclusive social development. And in this case, there's already been talk from Canada around the integration of indigenous knowledge as part of the transdisciplinarity. I want to pause here that there is actually another dimension, which is polyepistemic, to go beyond the production of knowledge within the same epistemes. And indigenous knowledge would add to that. And we in South Africa are very proud of our youth ambassadors who took the initiative even to use that in the public awareness. Congratulations to them. Socio-economic recovery from COVID-19 has seen an increased focus on the transition to the green economy and the digital agenda. In the work that we have just seen around SOCO, those agendas of the digital economy and also the green economy and the aspects of the fourth industrial revolution in terms of data science are already a part of our work, which we are promoting. I guess when my boss comes through, I need to go. So just a last comment. Finally, the program director, this pandemic has put pressure on research communities to accelerate science discovery, contributing not only to the public health response, but also to sustain socio-economic recovery. We ought to, as South Africa, wish the participants in this conference well, but also we want to ensure that we secure the future of the Belém Statement Partnership through activity. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Yona. If everyone can remember that initial video that we played about the energy in South Africa, I think Yona's contribution there is an illustration of that. And he says we need to go beyond policy statements, and he will illustrate. This will be illustrated tomorrow. I can't wait. And he also says, which is important, what happens on this spot in the south of the ocean impacts what happens on another spot in the northern region of the ocean. And I think with that, I will welcome our next speaker, Maria Zaira Turchi. She is the Director of Institutional Cooperation for the National Council for Scientific and Technological Development, CNPq, in Brazil. Over to you, Maria. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Dear partners, dear colleagues, I'm very glad to participate once more in this special moment, which is the All-Atlantic Forum, representing Brazil in this discussion among strategic partners. It is remarkable to note that despite the pandemic times we are going through, our all-Atlantic cooperation has advanced with mutual efforts and creativity since the past forum held in Brussels, the past February. The Atlantic is the second largest ocean on Earth, and for centuries has been a key avenue of international trade. It baths the largest number of countries, providing invaluable resources and environmental services. Despite the importance of the ocean in numerous aspects of our lives, many ecosystems and species in the Atlantic are suffering from impacts generated by unsustainable exploitation, pollution deriving from various sources, all multiplied by the effects of climate change. In this scenario, the All-Atlantic Ocean Research Alliance aims to cooperatively develop the best science with a paradigm shift towards the construction of a systemic, holistic, egalitarian, and socially oriented approach to deliver solutions. These responses tackle the wide range of impacts that humankind has been causing in the Atlantic, and they aim to finally achieve sustainable development, so as a healthy and resilient ocean from the Arctic to Atlantica. Science, technology, and innovation policies in Brazil take into account the United Nations 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. And our national plans and actions are guided by its priorities in order to achieve the 17 SDGs. The action plans we have based on our national strategy on science and technology are fully aligned with the SDGs. And this is also confirmed by the fact that Brazil is actively involved in the preparatory phase of United Nations Decade of Ocean Science for Sustainable Development, 2021-2030. The Ministry of Science, Technology and Innovation, through its Science at Sea program, supports all the areas considered as priority under the Belém Statement. We invest on ocean observations, risk and pollution management, as in the case of the enormous oil spill occurred in 2019. So as in research infrastructure, coastal, oceanic, and Antarctic research. Our funding agents, such as CNPq, FINEP, and CONFAP, both at federal and state level, support on a continuous basis numerous actions and calls which contribute to ocean themes, as for instance, our current participation to the European Green Deal call, among others. Capacity development, technology transfer towards blue growth, data sharing based on fair and care principles, ocean literacy and awareness, and ocean research infrastructures are core areas of the All-Atlantic Alliance, which can cooperatively help Brazil and all Atlantic countries to deliver scientifically based and efficient solutions. This in the overall effort of achieving a sustainable development, which may be inspired and strengthened by the numerous resources and ecological services, at the same time protecting the ocean which sustain us all. Science plays a crucial role in strengthening international cooperation and vice versa. Current global challenges do not recognize geopolitical boundaries and do not encourage isolated solutions. This is the case of the ocean, climate change, or in the pandemic we are now all facing. Together, in all the Atlantic Ocean Research Alliance, we can do more and work better. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Maria, and I definitely agree with you there. There's definitely no space for isolated solutions. The collaborative efforts are definitely what we need and what is being illustrated by this forum today. And amongst other things, the approaches that you say we need to take towards developing these solutions is more systemic, more holistic, and more socially conscious. And I like that. Social consciousness is coming up a lot, and social impact is coming up a lot today. And it tells me that we are all aligned in the mission to protect and develop socio-economic value out of the ocean. Thank you very much, Maria. I will move right along to receive the remarks by Craig McLean, who is the Assistant Administrator for Oceanic and Atmospheric Research at the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration in the United States of America. Over to you, Craig. Sorry.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Good day to everyone. And I would like to thank our hosts, the government of South Africa and the European Commission, for providing us with this opportunity. The All-Atlantic is a very important opportunity for all of us, and I think we are all rather comfortable with the direction that we're heading in. But the question is, how could we go farther? How could we go faster? How could we be more inclusive? And how could we really engage in true co-design? And I think the number of nations that are currently available to participate grows every year, and that's absolutely exciting. We began this day with a presentation, a very appropriate presentation that Thulile offered to us, reminding us of COVID and the world that we find ourselves in right now. It seems like in some ways just yesterday, but in other ways a long time ago, that we were gathered together in Brussels for the most recent meeting of this forum. And it's been a very strange new world that's evolved around us. But I just ask you, in considering the impact of COVID, which is how our conversation started, and what we do about it, let me travel back a good distance of time, but I think we all know and understand the history. Mid-century, last century, there was the ending of a terrible situation of a global war. And from that global war, we had the choice as a collection of nations to bask ourselves in desolation over the circumstance we inherited, or to find great optimism and come through it much stronger. And fortunately, we did come through much stronger by taking the technologies that were developed for that mid-century war and applying those to scientific research, to inquiry, and produce intellect, and produce economic prosperity from that intellect. We weren't very mindful of what the byproducts of that activity were. And those byproducts today are choking us in the atmosphere and polluting us in the water. And if we can evolve to the circular kind of economy that we all might identify with ambition, we'll be in a much better place. But we can't do that alone with science. But it has to start with science. So if I go back to the history, I think the United States can express its pride in our current involvement in activities that are in both North and South Atlantic Oceans, and started with that post-war technology application. We began programs, invited others to join, and other nations did in fact join. And today we have the wonderful experience of the Argo program, including new advances from the United States, and we welcome others to join in deep Argo and biogeochemical Argo. We have the Parada mooring that we share with Brazil and France, which really gives us insight to the tropical Atlantic and approaches to the western side of the Atlantic meridional overturning circulation, and South Atlantic meridional overturning circulation, or the SAMBA. CLIBAR, as a global oceanographic program, we're very much a sponsor of, and in many cases helped to create that, but joined, once again, by many nations that helped make it a global engagement. And in fact, it was a CLIBAR cruise that most recently our largest ship, the Ronald H. Brown, had departed from South Africa, a nation which provided great hospitality and academic collaboration with us in that CLIBAR cruise, right as things were closing down for the COVID seclusion that we all came under. So it's very important that we continue this pathway. The United States is proud of the direction that we have established, proud to be in partnership with many nations in carrying this forward, as expressed by the more formal Galway statement. And we look forward to Belém, and we look forward to continuing participation in the All-Atlantic. But let me just offer one thing. As we were gathering to discuss the UN Decade of Ocean Science for Sustainable Development, which, by the way, is a marvelous opportunity for the All-Atlantic team to consider what will our contribution be to the UN Decade as a united group with co-designed projects. But as we were gathering, one of our members of the executive planning group offered a more of a casual statement, and it was designed to be rather witty, and I think it was. But the question was, what additional science do we really need to do? We know enough now about what we need to do. Let's just do it. Basically, recruiting and calling for societal resilience to face the truths and the discomfort of transition to new ways of doing business. But of course, that was somewhat a comment in jest. We do need new science. We do need science that informs us. But I go back to that comment. We do know a lot right now. And what we're not effective at doing as a science community is conveying that to the social community. And therefore, Tulilu, I will go back to the comment that you've been reprising with each speaker. We need the social science, the behavioral science, the social psychology to understand how to reach those people in our society, change behaviors, and be able to generate a much healthier world, a much better and future world that we could be proud of for our grandchildren. Because right now, I'm embarrassed by what we're leaving them. We have to do better. And I think the All-Atlantic Forum is a way to compile solutions. I think the UN Decade is a marvelous tool to bring ocean-based visibility and awareness to the components of our society that aren't ocean-minded currently, but on a daily basis inure the benefits of the ocean ecosystem and the benefits of our ocean observations and forecasts. So I think we have an opportunity here. And as all of you know, I believe that the United States is approaching a transition to national leadership. I'm not in a position to offer any remarks as to where those additional policies or new policies might come from, but I certainly promise you that we as career government officials are very focused on what lies ahead, and we look forward to continuing our leadership and our investment and our provision of opportunities through all of the scientific programs that we are currently hosting and those beyond. And one I'll just mention is the most recent circumnavigation of the Antarctic continent by a completely autonomous vehicle, which basically redefined the carbon flux of Antarctica. So using new tools is something we need to be focused on as well. New tools, new methods, new opportunities through co-design as we apply them to existing and new programs. So I thank you for your time and your attention, and I look forward to the remainder of the comments from our colleagues. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Craig. I think if I had to sum up, if I was asked, give one word after Craig, what would you say? And I would say co-design. It's co-designing to respond as the All Atlantic Oceans Alliance and Forum to the UN decade. And that's the opportunity that you highlight and present here, using new technologies, new methods in ways that are going to convey the science to the people. But also, I think you challenge us a little bit there, Craig, when you speak about the decisions that were made after the war and how those decisions affect us today, and bringing to the fore really the importance of decisions being made today, having a visionary and forward-looking approach. But thank you very much. Certainly, co-design is my new favorite word, Craig. Thank you. Going to move on to Aran McPherson. She is the Assistant Deputy Minister for Fisheries and Oceans in Canada. Thank you, Aran.
Thank you very much. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone. Bonjour tout le monde. On behalf of the Canadians in attendance, it's really our pleasure to be participating in this All-Atlantic Ocean Research Forum. I'd like to start by thanking our hosts, the Republic of South Africa, the European Commission, and for bringing us together for this really valuable discussion. While we're not able to meet in person this year, I want to congratulate the organizers in this event for a very excellent opportunity to engage. The COVID pandemic has certainly impacted all of us in a significant way, changing the way we live our lives and how we work, while at the same time reinforcing the value of scientific collaboration internationally. And so I'm really pleased to be joining this group over the next 2 days to learn more about the initiatives that are already underway along the Atlantic Ocean and to identify the potential for additional collaborations. Over 7 million Canadians live in coastal communities who are dependent on the ocean, which is home to some of the most diverse ecosystems in the world and to valuable and vulnerable species and habitats. Protecting ocean resources is a priority for Canada, not only for today, but for generations to come. And as others have already noted in today's discussion, the best possible science is the necessary foundation for a blue economy, which puts the stewardship of our oceans at the forefront. And so you've already heard from Kendra McDonald, the CEO of Canada's Ocean Supercluster, which is focused on growing the ocean economy while developing innovative solutions to shared ocean challenges. As Kendra mentioned, and aligned with our domestic efforts, is our Prime Minister's membership on the high-level panel for a sustainable oceans economy. Canada is proud to be working with its international partners on this important initiative to support a productive global ocean economy that is underpinned by science. In fact, our national launch event for the Ocean Panel's Transformations document is taking place today in cooperation with our colleagues at the Ocean Frontier Institute, a transnational hub for ocean research in the North Atlantic. It'll feature Canada's Minister of Fisheries and Oceans and the Canadian Coast Guard, the Honourable Bernadette Jordan. So we're committed to science efforts that support sustainable ocean practices like the upcoming UN Decade for Ocean Science for Sustainable Development, and view the Ocean Decade as an essential effort to helping to achieve Agenda 2030 and to ensuring a healthy and productive ocean for future generations. Data stewardship and data sharing is and will continue to be an important component of this challenge for all of us. For example, Canada is a proud contributor to Seabed 2030, and the Canadian Hydrographic Service has recently released its non-navigational bathymetric dataset, NONA 10, which is a significant accomplishment in improving open accessibility to bathymetric data for the world. NONA 10 provides a wealth of information about the nature of Canada's seafloor, its depth, and other underwater features. The extremely valuable partnerships established under the Galway Statement on Atlantic Ocean Cooperation and in the All-Atlantic Ocean Research Alliance will be important vehicles for continuing to advance this work and provide us with an opportunity to deepen the collaborative efforts to tackle the range of challenges facing our oceans. We all bring different perspectives to these discussions, and as we've heard emphasized a few times already today, it'll be important to continue to try to broaden the range of voices and knowledge systems contributing to find and implement solutions to the increasingly complex issues we're all facing. The next cohort of the All-Atlantic Ocean Youth Ambassadors will be announced very soon, and Canada is really pleased to be able to take part in this effort. So a special thank you to our colleagues at the European Commission, JPI Oceans, and the other partners for leading the coordination of this incredible initiative. Events like this one are helping to continue to strengthen our science collaborations throughout the Atlantic Ocean community. And so I look forward to the exchange of ideas in our discussions today. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Aran, for that in-depth, it was actually a really short space of time, but you were able to tell us so much about what you guys are up to there in Canada. And it all sounds really compelling and really highlighting the different perspectives and the need for different perspective and the need for different voices is a major one, and it's coming through throughout the forum. And I imagine that different voices and different perspectives are going to come up again tomorrow. And as you say, we all look forward to learning from each other, growing from each other towards achieving the 2030 goals. And with that, next up, I can see Karina Pombo has already got her video on. Hi, Karina. Karina is the National Director for the Promotion of Science Policy in charge of scientific international cooperation at the Ministry of Science, Technology and Innovation in Argentina. Take it away, Karina. Thank you.
Thank you, Tul. Nice to meet you. It's a pleasure for me to stay here. I'm here on behalf of Doctora Carolina Vera, Chief of Cabinet of our Ministry of Science. She had a last-minute problem with her agenda and couldn't be present in this meeting. Sorry for that. Well, dear colleagues, it's an honor for me to participate in this forum. I would like to thank the organizers of the event. On this occasion, I would like to share with you the vision and experience of Argentina regarding marine research. United Nations have launched the Decade of Ocean Science for Sustainable Development from 2021 to 2030. One of the main challenges for marine research is to promote transformative solutions in ocean science for sustainable development, connecting people and the ocean. This can be achieved through improving international cooperation, including South-South and triangular cooperation in marine research and innovation, and raising the quality of knowledge for its application for sustainability. The Argentine Republic is committed to promoting international cooperation and activities of scientific marine research in order to generate update and relevant scientific information, which will in turn be the basis for the design and implementation of public policies in the sector. Argentina, through the Ministry of Science, Technology and Innovation, is an active partner in the All-Atlantic Cooperation for Ocean Research and Innovation project. The Pampa Azul initiative was launched in 2014 in order to integrate state-driven scientific technological actions in relation to Argentina's maritime spaces. It's a cross-cutting and multidisciplinary project which coordinates activities of several ministries. Relaunched this year with strengthened budget in development, Pampa Azul aims to promote scientific research, technological development and innovation to preserve and efficiently manage marine resources, which is one of the ways Argentina exercises to sovereignty over our waters and continental shelf. Pampa Azul initiative also seeks to promote technological innovation that contribute to the strengthening of industries linked to the sea and the economic development of the Argentina maritime and coastal regions, as well as to promote greater awareness in the Argentina society about its maritime heritage and the responsible use of its vast resources. The main objective of Pampa Azul are the following: strengthening the capacities of the scientific technological system to contribute to public policies related to the sea. Some actions, for example, general refitting of ships and expansion of the fleet for research and development, increasing the number of marine research campaigns, reinforcing and expanding maritime observation and monitoring systems, strengthening the national marine data system, strengthening interinstitutional capacities for research, development, and innovation with a federal perspective through creation of interinstitutional centers and call for research, development, and innovation projects with an interinstitutional and federal perspective. The third one is moving forward the agenda of strategic issues that contribute to reaffirmation of our sovereignty and national security, social, economic, and environmental sustainable development with a focus on technological innovation, social inclusion, protection of natural marine goods, integration of marine and coastal environment, gender perspective. 5 priorities geographical area have been selected under Pampa Azul on the basis of their oceanographic characteristic, the importance of their ecosystems, and the potential impact of human activities. Barkwood Bank, Namuncurá Marine Protected Area, Continental Slope Front, Blue Hole, San Jorge Gulf, Antarctic Island, South Georgia and South Sandwich Island, and river sea system of Rio de la Plata. Regarding international cooperation, several projects and activities are linked to Pampa Azul initiative. SAMOC project, for example, South Atlantic and Meridional Overturning Circulation. The main objective of SAMOC are to measure the strength and variability of the MOC, as well as the meridional heat and fresh water are crucial to improving our understanding of climate system variability. Argentina, Brazil, United States, France, and South Africa are participants in this project. The other is, for example, project strengthening capacities in marine and coastal environment using nuclear and isotopic techniques. Different countries in Latin America and the Caribbean are participating. Its aim is to study the acidification of the oceans, harmful algal blooms, microplastic, and eutrophication in coastal
to 2030 kind of action about the end of the beginning. We're moving out into recovery, restoration, and regeneration. And science must light our pathway to a sustainable future for the oceans. This, our Blue Enlightenment, that was launched at Belém, that was defined in Salvador, that was unleashed in Brussels, and that is being developed and deepened here in South Africa, is underway. And history, as Craig has mentioned, is a good guide. And I think in South Africa, do these words mean more than anywhere else? We have a choice, as we say in Ireland in history, to be endured or to write it. And that's what we're doing here today. It's time that science took up the pen in terms of moving from the situation we find ourselves in today, this grim period in human history we're living through today, to do something with it to improve the future. And looking at history, we see that when we started this journey at the Atlantic Ocean Research Cooperation in 2013, with the signing of the Galway Agreement, when Commissioner Gagan Quinn pointed out that the signing was not the end of the process, it was in fact a new beginning, and that this form of globalization can connect us more closely, with the oceans no longer regarded as a blue divide, but rather as a rich, fertile, unifying force between us. Our forum is testament to how far we've come, how far this has moved from being a kind of globalization, in fact, to be a kind of a shared planetization. We're moving to bring together the community. We don't leave anybody behind. Now, this sounds like fine language, but to give you an example, what the European Union is doing, and this is what we do, we are all these faceless bureaucrats that we all know. We're busy making sure that every sinew and muscle, every item of our ability and capacity will be dedicated to this for the next 30 years. And so whether you're talking about laws or research or funding or markets or currencies or investment, we're doing that. And yesterday, the European Commission adopted a new EU-US agenda for global change. Just apparently there's some reason for doing that at the moment on the other side of the Atlantic. One of our key transatlantic relations, it sets out at the center the need to set up ocean protection is at the center. One of the major actions that is there, that we need to work together to produce a global plastics treaty and to designate maritime protected areas in the Southern Ocean so that we get our 30% of protection that we need. And that's an example of how in every communication that we have, we're putting this transition front and center. Very hopeful, I think, for all of us in this process. We're changing our laws to be fit for 55% reductions in 2030. There's a climate pact to mobilize our society. There's a huge movement in terms of biodiversity, the reform of our food systems, the building of a circular economy at every level. And in response to this dreadful pandemic, where again, we must all stick together as we roll out the treatments and the vaccines and make sure that everybody has access to what they need. There's a big wall of investment in what's called Next Generation European Union, a recovery and resilience facility, and a just transition fund. And this will be used to drive forward these green and digital transitions to power a renovation wave across Europe and with our neighborhoods. So it is a moment of great difficulty, but a moment of great hope, and a moment in the European Union, at least, where we see our responsibilities to our own citizens, but to our neighbors and partners around to help in making this transformation happen. So where does research and innovation fit into all of this? We use language like research and innovation as an enabler of the European Green Deal transitions across all of these major work streams. And we're working, for example, with representatives from all our European member states to set up a future co-fund action called a climate neutral, sustainable, productive blue economy. That's very specific. But in general, we're at a moment of transition where science has to shift from being observer to actor, from evidence provider to that which provides prediction, and from research to policy. As Jonas said at the beginning, from pronouncement to direction and action. We need this science to light the way through the 21st century by demonstrating, piloting, and scaling up approaches and solutions and making them available to those who are most affected by the changes that are happening. And nowhere is this clearer than where we're having this conversation today. So in short, research and innovation needs to step up. It needs to turn on the lights, the pathway to a climate sustainable future. And our Blue Enlightenment is what we're talking about in these days, is a way of doing that and turning the lights on for and with the ocean. In practice, what are we doing about it? We launched European Green Deal. Marie, you mentioned it, a Green Deal call under Horizon 2020 with a budget of €1 billion. This came out of the discussions we were having this time last year in the Arctic, actually, with the people there, with the local indigenous people. It's a major cross-cutting call that aims to kickstart urgent climate action in support of the Green Deal objectives and the recovery plan for Europe. And it targets 8 particular areas where there can be breakthroughs, and a couple of areas where we can actually put in place the data, the analytics, the digital map of the ocean, the different things that can facilitate. It proposes a clear, impact-focused approach, supporting the development of these ideas into pilot applications, demonstration projects, innovative approaches, experiments, and so forth. It again, I was listening to Michael earlier on talking about what can be done to generate work in the economy, which is so important to what we're doing. And here, innovation is indeed the secret algorithm of this transition, and we need to nurture it and encourage it. So this Green Deal call is underway. Please have a look at it if you haven't. It closes on the 26th of January, and we would really like to work very closely with all of our partners in this. In parallel to that, we have our multi-annual budget decision taking place with our member states, and out of that will come the new framework program, Horizon European Green Deal Transitions. And it is seeking to work beyond and with and beyond the supporting of the normal array of science and innovation topics to drive these green and blue transitions. I mentioned the program co-fund, climate neutral, sustainable and productive blue economy. Huge opportunity for all of you around the Atlantic to work together in partnership with public and investors. Because we believe in Europe that science is in the business of building bridges, not walls. In addition, there's a new development, which is a kind of a moonshot, or an earth shot more likely, set of initiatives, 4 European Green Deal missions, which are proposed under Horizon Europe, fostering ambitious long-term research and innovation-driven disruptions to accelerate the transitions. One is around a climate resilient Europe, preparing Europe for climate disruptions and accelerate the transformation to climate resilient to just Europe by 2030. That's about climate adaptation. Caring for soil is caring for life, restoring 75% of the soils in the European Union, 100 climate neutral cities by 2030, buy-in for citizens, and of course for the oceans, Mission Starfish 2030, restoring our ocean and waters. Now, all of these by definition will be open to our cooperation with our partners. Let me, for a moment, Francois Galgani spoke a little earlier about the Mission Oceans. Again, this is one for us all to look at. The Mission Board, How the Oceans, Seas, Coastal and Inland Waters, has proposed a holistic Mission Starfish to restore our oceans and waters, what Pascal Lamy calls the hydrosphere, what connects us. In brief, it talks about addressing 5 objectives, which together will enable the restoration of the water cycle as a whole, filling the knowledge and emotional gaps of citizens vis-a-vis our ocean and waters, regenerating marine and water ecosystems through increased protection and active restoration. And that's everything from the investment in the water treatment systems to the restoration of rivers, zero pollution and decarbonizing our blue economy, and finally to creating an integrated and participatory system of ocean and water governance. So we warmly welcome the proposals, and we're now working to the advice on detailed planning or blueprints, and you're all very much invited to engage in that process in the coming months. So to conclude, the All-Atlantic Ocean Research Alliance is an ideal framework for rolling out the mission internationally and for mobilizing a community, not just of these wonderful youth ambassadors, but maybe bringing together some of the ocean elders too, to rewrite the history and the future of our ocean. It's a place where we hope to pilot concrete game-changing solutions together with you, our international partners. And if I may add a phrase, having listened to our colleagues from across the ocean, to a phrase that we will hear a lot of in the next few days. We need science to enlighten our pathways, of course. So what we need when we talk in this context, we say we have to move towards the science that we need for the ocean that we want. And I would add, and it must be for the people that we serve. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, John, for all of those invitations. And I'm sure everybody is listening, and I'm sure this recording will become available so that we can all really dive into all of the opportunities that we're spoken about here. And then we can all engage with them further. Secondly, congratulations on your Zulu. I mean, that was incredible. I'm really, really impressed with that. But I like your use of words. I love your use of words. You say the ocean we must treat like a rich, fertile, unifying force and not a great blue divide. And then you go on to say we need to move from being, where scientists need to move from being an observer, they need to move from observer to action. And I think that links in so nicely with what Kwan was saying earlier about post-normal science, where the scientists are engaged and they are practically involved in the solutions. And then lastly, of these beautifully crafted gems that you are dropping here, that innovation is the secret algorithm to job creation. Thank you very much, John. And that wraps up this segment of our proceedings for the day. And we have one more panel discussion that highlights or overviews of selected Horizon 2020 projects which support the Atlantic Ocean Research Alliance. And these projects specifically aim at understanding and sustainably managing the Atlantic Ocean as a whole through a large-scale basin effort involving both the northern and the southern parts of this ocean and its interlinks with the others. In order to achieve this, they bring together scientists, stakeholders, data, knowledge, expertise, capacities, and resources through synergistic cooperation along and across the Atlantic Ocean, and the creation of long-term partnership Atlantic Ocean Research Alliance.
Is an opportunity to mitigate the North-South power imbalance. As Vincent et al. 2020 say, inequitable North-South partnerships are born out of a paradigm of knowledge deficit and capacity development that runs the risk of entrenched existing inequalities. So creating a framework that enables the establishment of equitable partnerships require a shift in perspectives on and process related to the design, implementation, and evaluation of success. And this is a shift in perspective. And we show here, as we illustrate, and this shift in perspective is illustrated here as we display the global map. The project has 4 core themes and 3 case studies. Base scale Atlantic in a light blue, Northeast Brazil, and Southern Benguela, dark blue circles. Next slide, please. The first core.
An integrated system in which we can predict changes from seasons to years in advance. So basically, we're aiming to build a digital capability to provide unique tool for understanding, confidence, and an ability to predict future changes in the marine ecosystems as an aid to managers. So we focus on those 3 regions, and being the whole of the Atlantic, and there's southeastern Brazil and the northeastern Brazil, and the southeastern Benguela region. And we have 3 different Earth system models and 3 different ecosystem models that we are combining within the project. So the next thing that we're doing is to empowering. We're training a new generation of researchers and providing new tools and technology. So a key component here is the CANEMS, is the Cross-Atlantic Network of Excellence in Marine Science. So within this program, we are training a new generation of interdisciplinary researchers. We are developing regional master's programs. Highlight the one in Benin, co-tutelate degrees. We had summer schools. It's obviously very difficult at this stage to have summer schools, but we were fortunate enough to have one in January, actually in Cape Town, which you can see a picture there of. We have had onboard training, and we are aiming to have research days. Again, that has been a little bit difficult. Another thing that I'd like to highlight here is a fisheries app that has been developed by colleagues in Brazil. And it's a very nice tool for collecting data using a mobile phone. And this will enable a wide range of data to be collected from local fisheries communities. So we're building an all-Atlantic climate and marine ecosystem research community for Triatlas. So it goes well beyond what the Triatlas team itself. So for example, we held again, unfortunately, it was online, but the online format allows for a lot more participation. And so the Triatlas General Assembly was held in conjunction with the Tropical Atlantic Variability and Pirata international programs. So you've heard already about Pirata being this observational network in the tropical Atlantic, moored arrays. So we had more than 157 registrants from Africa, Asia, Europe, North and South America. There was the presentations included many from outside of the project. So we had 8 oral presentations, 6 of those were from Tropical Atlantic Variability community. We had 60 poster presentations in parallel sessions, and 15 of those were from outside of the Triatlas community. So we're really aiming to build an international program or network in research on climate and marine ecosystems across the whole of the Atlantic. And with that, I'd like to thank you.
Thank you so much, Regina and Noel. Great research outputs there, and clearly evidence that you're building the community you're talking about, and you're building it from different levels as well, which is really cool. If we had a bit of time, and if we were going to ask questions, I was going to ask Regina about overfishing and what impact the job in the home as opposed to externally. I would be very interested to hear that, because we do have a little bit of time. In just a minute, if we go over a minute, Regina, I will get into trouble. My bosses are also watching.
Yeah, it's a combine of overfishing and actually the climate change. We see that these extreme events of a temperature, for instance, has a huge impact here where I live, which is an island in the southern part of Brazil. Interrupted. I mean, decimated some species of this, so it has a huge impact on and we would like to see more conservation policies here.
I understand your response, Regina. Perhaps asking it differently, I want to know how it impacts the fishermen.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, exactly that. We have a small fishermen, artisanal fishermen, and they have a lot of job with it, and it's really difficult.
I see.
Yeah.
I see, and it's not because of overfishing; it's because of the quality now
It's a combined effect of the overfishing, as well the climate pressure or this is extremes, for instance, and pollution altogether on the stocks and then and the livelihoods, and they migrate a little bit. Some can actually migrate for tourism instead. I've seen this here happening. But not all of them can do that.
Thank you.
So that is really.
Thank you so much to both you. Regina, and thank you very much. Next, we will go to the iAtlantic with Murray Roberts and AJ Smith.
Thank you very much. My name is Murray Roberts, and it's a great pleasure to represent today the iAtlantic project, Southeast Atlantic Regional Coordinator for our project. iAtlantic is an integrated assessment of Atlantic marine ecosystems in space and time, and we're a project that focuses on the deep and open ocean. We're also a project that embraces the all-Atlantic approach. We work from the north of Iceland, in fact, all the way to the south, the southern tips of Africa and South America. We work from Europe across to Canada and the United States, and down through the shores of Brazil and Western Africa. So we have an ambitious agenda ahead of us, and I want to try to summarize our work in the next few minutes together. One of the foundations for our project and for our plan was actually recognizing the really significant imbalances that we've heard about throughout today. To me, this graphic from IOC UNESCO's 2017 Global Ocean Science Report is one of the most shocking graphics that I think I've ever come across. These are cartograms where the globe, the world, the maps of the world are distorted by at the top the number of citations received in marine sciences. So this is a very, very unfair and a very, very bad situation. And this is one of the reasons that in iAtlantic and in our sister projects like Triatlas, we've created networks of early career researchers. We're investing a lot of resource, a lot of energy in our young people. We put them at the front of our agendas, and we're very, very proud of the work they do. Please, everyone on this call, do follow our fellows in iAtlantic. We run webinars, very engaged and joining in huge numbers. So please do follow our fellows. Look at our website for any details on that. iAtlantic is a big project. It's a big consortium. I clearly can't summarize all of the partners in our project, but we draw our partnership from right around the Atlantic Basin. The budget is just a shade over 10 million euros. There are 35 beneficiaries of that budget, but there's a wider partnership, a growing partnership of other associated partners. And we're excited to be developing an MOU at the moment with the Benguela Current Commission. So what is it we're actually doing in iAtlantic? I can't summarize in 3 or 4 minutes all of the aspects of our project, but I can give you a sense of our objectives. So in iAtlantic, we aim to standardize ocean observing in the north and south to establish short, medium, and long-term assessments of ocean circulation. To put some flesh on those bones, we work closely with our other projects. Working with Triatlas, we've enhanced the capacities of the Samba array by buying instrumentation, deploying it. The physical oceanographers in our 2 projects working very closely together to make the best of those investments. That's a big part, that's a foundational aspect of our work. We're working to map deep ocean ecosystems. Think here of the multi-beam bathymetry of the seafloor, this emerging technology. We're applying autonomous systems to that question. We're working at whole basin scales, regional and local scales. It's a big part of iAtlantic. The core of our ecosystem assessments are assessing stability, vulnerability, and tipping points in relation to a whole variety of stressors. That scientific evidence base then moves into work to build and enhance human and technological capacities and to work with industry, regulator, and government stakeholders. We work with some very large industries, including the offshore sector, and we work with a number of smaller industries as well. And we have a working group focused on local and indigenous knowledge in the iAtlantic project. All of the details are on our website. The places in the Atlantic that we work are shown on this slide. We have 12 study areas crossing the whole breadth of the Atlantic, north to south, east to west. The many lines that cross that map illustrate in black the ocean observing arrays of instrumentation, like the Samba array in the South Atlantic, the OSNAP and RAPID arrays in the North Atlantic. The little flecks that you can see, almost like a snowstorm across the map, are the Argo floats we heard about from Craig McLean. We work intensely with the data sets derived from Argo. In red on that map, you can see some of the flagship expeditions of iAtlantic. Some of these are curtailed by the COVID pandemic, and we're working very hard to replan and reorganize our objectives in light of those changes. The team responsible for leading iAtlantic, I gratefully acknowledge. You can see everybody's pictures on the slide. There's a tremendous group there with regional coordination in each corner of the Atlantic Basin. I now want to move to my co-presenter, AJ Schmidt from the University of Western Cape. And AJ is going to bring a little bit of light and color to some of the work that's going on in the Southeast Atlantic. So AJ, I'll pass the slide to you.
Thank you, Murray. Murray gave a beautiful overview of the broad, the high-level details of iAtlantic, and I would like to use this opportunity to take a view from the Southeast Atlantic, from Cape Town side, and to give a small overview about one of the objectives that we are particularly involved in and participating in, and add value to the iAtlantic program. Earlier in the Tri-Atlas talk, we heard some mention of marine heatwaves. Marine heatwaves is something that here in South Africa we're particularly interested in for several reasons. One of the reasons is that the Atlantic Ocean is very strongly connected to the Indian Ocean, and pulses of hot water spin off the Agulhas Current and enter the Southeast Atlantic portion of the Atlantic Ocean. So we would like to use the marine heatwave analysis to shed some light into the dynamics of how the hot water move into the Southeast Atlantic Ocean. So that's a new application of marine heatwaves. We know a lot about marine heatwaves in shallow water ecosystems, but in iAtlantic, we'd like to use it to add additional views into oceanographic processes. But we would also like to use the marine heatwave algorithm coupled with some of the cutting edge ocean models in both hindcast and forecast modes to understand how hot water behaves, or things that can be seen as marine heatwaves behave in the ocean interior, as well as on the benthos. So to that end, we would like to do an entire marine heatwave analysis over about 50 years back in time, 50 years forward in time, and understand how pulses of hot water behave associated with the ocean floor, and particularly use this to come up with maps of risk and vulnerability to understand how the very sensitive deep water biota could respond to pulses of hot water. So that is one of the views that here from the southern side of the Atlantic we would like to offer in our contributions towards the entire iAtlantic program. Thank you, Murray.
Thank you so much, AJ. And just to move to our final slide from iAtlantic, to summarize for you the expected impacts and ambitions of the project, I won't run through BELEM. We're huge fans of the BELEM statement and the bringing together of partnerships. We will be improving monitoring and assessments, developing ecosystem assessments. Then if you look at the center of our list of ambitions, it's really to implement and to work directly with policy. We want to take our scientific findings and without any hesitation or delay, move direct to policy fora. And we do that. We have track record in the North Atlantic Galway process of doing that. We're very keen to enhance. I will stop in one second just to flag a couple of things I think would be of interest to the wider community. iAtlantic is spearheading with our sister projects a GEOS Atlantic community site. If you're interested in that in terms of data sharing and pooling of Atlantic data, please be in touch with us. And we're very interested and actively engaged through our advisory boards and other routes in the UN decade. Thank you so much for your attention.
Thank you so much for that presentation to you, both Murray and AJ Smith. And again, I revert back to being a virologist and sitting here and thinking about how informative all of this is and how incredible the research that is being done is, you know, and I'm sitting here and I'm thinking to myself, how does the map, when we have the map, how does it assist the layperson? And at what point do we incorporate the layperson into the research that we do and into our research communities? Is there a move, very quickly, is there a move to incorporate the layperson, the community into the research, and if so, how?
Yes, 100%. At the end of the day, iAtlantic will all be about the maps that we produce, the maps that will highlight those areas of the Atlantic that are changing the most rapidly, within which we have ecosystems showing signs of tipping from one state to another, as AJ was explaining. And we're bringing people with that at every stage. So we're working intensely with filmmakers and with educators and with others to do that work. We're actually using lessons learned in the North Atlantic in that process. We're even developing planetaria visualizations of the Atlantic to show people the Atlantic almost in a three-dimensional sense in public planetariums. And we want to do that with partners in Brazil and across Europe and South Africa as well.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Murray and AJ Smith, for that presentation. I think it's become my job. I've sort of made it my job to try and understand how our science intersects and interfaces with the people. The next project that we're going to hear from is Aqua Vitae, and there we have Philip James and Cliff Jones.
Thank you, Talila. It will just be myself presenting today. Can you see my screen?
I can. It's not in presentation mode. However, thank you.
And now, great. All right. Well, thank you very much, and thank you to the organisers of the All Atlantic Ocean Research Forum for the possibility of presenting Aqua Vitae here today. My name is Phil James. I come from, I work at an institute called Nofima, which is based in the north of Norway in Tromsø, well inside the Arctic Circle. So wherever you are, you're probably a bit warmer than where we are today, but it's very nice to be a part of this webinar. I'm going to present Aqua Vitae, which is a relatively large. We have 35 partners from 16 different countries. And the main aim of Aqua Vitae is to unlock the potential of sustainable, low-trophic aquaculture in the Atlantic. I'm just going to take a step back. One of the first recorded events of aquaculture in Europe was back in 1235 AD, and that was the culture of blue mussels in France. If we go forward from there, there's been this move towards intensive monoculture aquaculture. What I mean by that is very large farms, very intense, high biomass of animals, and normally just one species. A good example, I think, is the intensive high-tech salmon farming that we see in Norway today. Salmon, of course, being a relatively high trophic level species. In the last 5 to 10 years, we've seen this paradigm shift where we've got a number of reports from both the EU and, of course, Europe and Africa as well. We have 11 specific case studies from these 5 value chains. They're all color-coded there. You can see where they relate. In terms of IMTA, we have 3 case studies: sea-based, land-based, and biofloc. We're also looking at producing sea urchins and sea cucumbers, new species of macroalgae and pond culture on land, and offshore cultivation of brown kelp as well. Looking at different aspects of mussel and oyster aquaculture, and also both freshwater and marine species of finfish in Brazil. We have a couple of cross-cutting case studies as well. One of those is utilizing the byproduct from the mussel industry, specifically the shells as an example. And the other one is using low trophic species as feed for high trophic species, such as the Brazilian flounder. And what are the outputs from these case studies? We've divided them into 3 stages. We've got the hatchery stage, the post-hatchery and grow-out stage, and the post-harvest stage. 18 new processes and products from the first of those, 48 processes and products from the second, and 43 new products from the post-harvest stage. In total, 109 new low-trophic products and processes coming from Aqua Vitae in the life of the project. And I should have mentioned at the beginning, we're at month 18 of the project at the moment. All of these are contributing to unlocking the potential of sustainable aquaculture. And we use that word sustainable, it's a big word. I think we need to have an understanding of what that is. So alongside the more practical case studies, we have a series of work packages. One of them is looking at what sustainable low trophic aquaculture actually really means. They've produced an excellent report It's published 2 or 3 months ago, where they defined what the desired state was. They linked it back to the prioritised sustainable development goals and created a very substantial list of sustainability indicators to allow us to monitor where we are now, what we need to monitor in order to what we need to monitor in order to get to our desired state, and how we monitor whether or not we stay in that state. And they produced this excellent diagram as part of the report, showing the 4 main pillars of sustainability. And it's very clear that unless we address economic issues, environmental, social, and governance issues around low trophic aquaculture, then it's never going to be viable. So I really like this diagram. I think it makes it very clear the broad aspects that we need to cover in a project like Aquavitae. It's not just about biology, it's not just about economics or social aspects. And in this diagram, they link back to the Sustainable Development Goals and give an excellent summary of those 4 pillars. I mentioned policy and governance because for a relatively new industry like low trophic aquaculture, we really need strong and reliable policy and governance. So again, in another work package, we've been running a review of the legislation on algae aquaculture and IMTA in the countries that you see on the map there to the left. And in association with that, a series of workshops, again, run right around the Atlantic, looking again at both macroalgae and IMTA in terms of stakeholder perception, where they see the bottlenecks and where they see the needs of the future. We have a large and growing multi-stakeholder platform, remembering this is at month 18 of the project. At the moment, we have 165 stakeholder organisations, ranging from the case study level right up to the much broader policy type Atlantic level. In terms of communication and dissemination, so far we've reached an audience of 2.2 million across 150 activities. And what's really pleasing and interesting is that the countries that are really driving those numbers are Brazil, Norway, South Africa, and Spain. So it's really, really very pleasing to see both Brazil and South Africa in there and just show what a huge contribution they're making to the project. A point, Siggy actually made this point in a meeting, I can't remember when the meeting was, but she pointed out that it's relatively easy to convince somebody like this whose life depends on the health of the ocean, how important projects like Aquavitae and other All Atlantic projects are. Much more important, much more difficult to get to and convince all sectors of society. For instance, the example that Siggy used was the Austrian taxi driver, and that's the challenge that we face in all of these projects, I guess, and it's been discussed many times earlier in the day. We do have consumer perception and attitude work package as well, which are looking at how members of society perceive low trophic aquaculture and what their attitudes towards it are. And finally, as in many of the other projects, the youth of today we see as a really big part of Aquavitae's legacy for tomorrow. These are some of the masters, PhDs and postdoc students we have working in Aquavitae. We're very proud of them all. This is our first student exchange, which COVID allowing will happen next year. This is Linnea. She's traveling from the USA to study in Sweden. And inspired by the Follow the Fellows, which I thought was a really fantastic concept, we've now kicked off our Low Trophic Life webinar, and Stephanie here from the University of Sao Paulo was our first speaker last week, and that went extremely well. And we look forward to hearing, these are the people that will inherit the aquaculture industry in the future, will drive policy. So absolutely crucial in our project, as they are across all the projects. So thank you very much for listening. Thank you for the opportunity to present Aquavitae. Please come and visit our website if you want any information or contact one of the partners. And if you can, remember, please eat more low trophic seafood. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Philip. I happen to love oysters, as it were, so I will continue to do so as per your recommendation. You speak about the future policymakers and so on, and I like that, because as PhD and master students, we're never really conscientized to the policy components of the work and the research that we do, and the social impacts of the work that we do. And if it is, it's very theoretical, and I'm hoping that this building of this pipeline and this conscious youth that you speak of will also be very aware of the political or the policy side of the research that they do. Thank you very much, Philip, for your presentation. Thank you.
Thanks.
We move on now to Astral, and that is presented by Elisa Ravignan and Thomas Chalde. I'm struggling with these here names.
Hello, good morning and good afternoon. Just a moment, the display setting is a little bit fuzzy. Can you see the presentation mode?
No, it's not on presentation mode yet. Now it's on presentation mode, thank you.
Perfect, thank you. So good morning and good afternoon. It's really very a pleasure to be here at the forum. And I'm Elisa Ravignan from NORS, the Norwegian Research Center up in Norway, a little bit south than Philip that just presented, but still in quite far north. And my co-presenter would be Thomas Chalde from the south of Argentina. So we almost are from pole to pole today. So we are here to present you another project awarded in the BG08 group in the All Atlantic Ocean, that is All Atlantic Ocean Sustainable and Profitable and Resilient Aquaculture, Astral. And we are really very pleased. We just started in September, so unfortunately we cannot present so striking results as the three projects that were before us. But we are really very interested in the All Atlantic Ocean. We really will present new results at the next forum. So only a few words about the project overview. Of course, Astral is the overall objective is to develop a new sustainable, profitable and resilient value chain for integrated multi-trophic aquaculture. And as Philip was saying before, is when you can grow different type of species in the same area. So foster circularity and natural circularity. And of course, this will is for the whole for Atlantic markets. And the Astral Consortium is multidisciplinary, of course, but also multisectoral. We have a research and technology organization, academia, SMEs, association, cluster of industries, governmental and intergovernmental organizations. And of course, the core of the project is the 4 IMTA labs, our case studies. And we focus on IMTA, but in different systems. So beside having the classical IMTA that is open offshore, we also have the flow through inshore and recirculating inshore, the spread between Ireland, Scotland, South Africa, and Brazil. And also Argentina, that we call our prospective IMTA lab, not being an IMTA lab, an IMTA system there, but wanted to learn from this exchange experience with other areas and systems to decide the best possibilities. And of course, all those systems focus on a regional channel-based perspective and include different type of chain and different type of species. And as you can see from the map, we are nicely spread around the Atlantic Ocean. As I say, the IMTA lab are our core of the project, of course. And now I will illustrate some of the plan and achievement. So what we would like to do is to, of course, improve the IMTA value chain with new species and also new novel species combination. That's really very important in an IMTA system. Developing operation welfare indices, so for health management, assessing the risk pathogens and infections for the biosecurity, and suggest the best practice in this overview of the knowledge transfer. But of course, all the production is really very important, but it's really very important to assess all the level of sustainability. So, so the ecological, the environmental, but also the social, economic. So in Astral, we will determine the best IMTA configuration to reduce the waste, so to achieve the zero waste, to assess and increase the circularity, to develop business models, and also to improve the social license to operate. But of course, we are not operating in a bubble. These systems it's important to monitor what is happening in the production, but also the impact and the interaction from and to the environment. So Astral will develop an innovative technological pool, not only exactly to monitor the production, but also to monitor some external stressors that we have identified as the harmful algal bloom, the pathogens and microplastic, and of course, the effect of climate change on this type of production. But as we have heard today in basically all the presentation, to go together is going beyond the capability of the single. So the collaboration is extremely important in Astral too, not only with the other projects and the community of researchers, but also with the stakeholders. And when I'm saying stakeholders, I'm talking about all the stakeholders. So not only industry, but policymaker, education, and everybody, and citizens, everybody together. So Astral is developing a stakeholder platform that we can call that is the aquaculture helix, and also implementing a collaborative ecosystem through the Atlantic Aquaculture Alliance, or 3A, to foster stable collaboration between stakeholders. And of course, to increase the professional skills and competence with dedicated training programs. I have to mention that, of course, I totally agree with all the other projects that the students are really very important, but we think also we have the ambition to work also with the lower grade students, with the children at the primary school, because they are the next generation, and it's really very important to start to educate them now to a new future. And now I can leave Thomas.
Yes, thanks, Elisa. In Astral, we expect, as Elisa said, to contribute to LEM statement, and we have an ambitious plan to reach an all-Atlantic research community, connecting science, producers, community, policymakers, and any other relevant stakeholders related to aquaculture production. We will promote the exchange of data, the exchange of knowledge, and generate business opportunities. And all these interactions will be focused on reaching agreements in order to know which is the best way to develop sustainable aquaculture across all these Atlantic countries that Elisa mentioned before. We also expect to increase competitiveness in blue economy and promote leadership in ocean technology development, not only to support aquaculture production, but also, and very important, to improve monitoring of environmental risk of this activity. To do that, we will develop an ambitious plan of training workforce in blue economy, and of course in aquaculture through a human capital plan connecting the experiences of several Atlantic countries. Next, please, Elisa. And one of the most important impacts of these projects will be the development of new production systems in aquaculture, specifically integrated multi-trophic aquaculture system, following the sustainable, resilient, and profitable food production. And last, another critical impact we expect from Astral is to increase consumers' trust and confidence in seafood products. We will explore social license and social acceptability on these products. And to do that, we will develop a transparency working plan and making a great effort for disseminating all the activities that we are going to do in this project. Elisa, if you have a finished word.
Yeah. No, thank you. Please follow our social media, follow the project, and we are really very happy to be to have entered the community and to be able to collaborate with the other project and the community at large in the Atlantic Ocean. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much to you both, Elisa and Thomas. And I think by now I'm quite predictable, I'm sure, and I want to just say thank you for starting at primary school level and building that pipeline from the bottom up, because what becomes a problem is changing the mindset of a person who's been doing something in a particular way for a very long time. So if we start when they're younger and they are agile and they're malleable to listening to what it is we are wanting to say to them for the betterment of society, I think it's a great place to start. Thank you to you both. And I move on now to the project, the Mission Atlantic. And our presenter there is Patrizio Mariani.
Exactly. If I can get the presentation. Sure. I hope that you can see my screen in the presenter mode.
Yes, perfect. Thank you.
So thank you very much for the opportunity to present Mission Atlantic, a project that just started. We are at month 3. We did the kickoff in October. So we are one of the new one on the stage here. And the main motivation to start Mission Atlantic, which is actually a quite ambitious program, which will run from 2020 to 2025, was the idea of transformative changes. Transformative changes mean that the way we will look at the method we use for ocean management in 2030, and we look back at 2020, and we say, okay, these methods are out of date. We want to make new one. We have ideas for making new methods for integrated ecosystem assessment, many in coastal areas, but we will show you also some open ocean case studies that we have. And we think that the period is just right because we have these international initiatives like the Sustainable Development Goals, but also the Decade of Ocean Science that can really create the momentum for these transformative changes. We also start to realize that some of the stressors we have in the Atlantic, they are across scales. Some of them, they are regional. For example, here is the sargassum bloom a few years back. Some of them are very local, but devastating. And this is the picture from the oil spill last August in Brazil. Some of them are global. And we heard about these marine heat waves and the strong impacts that they have on ecosystem, bringing them to the edge of a tipping point or maybe crossing tipping points. And these tipping points, they're not in isolation. They will act together, most likely. So we need new methods and we need to develop them. There is a very good initiative from the World Economy that involves more than one country and not a single country can face. That were the main motivation of Mission Atlantic. How we do that? We think that we'll use this integrated marine ecosystem assessment approach, which is a framework that is well established in the literature. We will apply it in an operational sense across different case studies in the Atlantic Ocean. So Mission Atlantic will develop and systematically apply integrated ecosystem assessment, which basically implies that we will identify the ecosystem components that are most at risk for natural hazards and consequences of human activities. And we will use all the information available out there in terms of time series, in terms of data collected. We will work together with the projects that have been there and they have already data collected. They have already knowledge that is developed. We will build upon that with them. The structure of the project is around basically the scoping idea. So understanding at the local, regional level, what are the main problems for the management? So what is the problem that we have to answer or to address? We will develop specific indicators for ecosystem state. So to understand if the problem is going one direction or the other direction, are we in a critical conditions where maybe a tipping point is it's close by to be crossed? We will perform risk analysis. Once we have this picture of the indicators and understanding of them across different scales, what is the risk of one of these indicators to fail to stay in a good environmental status, but to cross the line and go into regions that we don't know? We will also make scenarios. So not only the situation as it is now, but how it will look in the future. And we will make a synthesis across all the case studies at the Atlantic Basin scale. And we don't do this in isolation. We do this always together with the society. So as we speak, we have already case study leaders that are involving the society and stakeholders to discuss about problems in the region, to identify maybe initial indicators for that. And we will keep this process ongoing in terms of validation of the indicators with them, validation of the results that we get, and also understanding of the models and the problems, and if this analysis actually helps them in their daily life. So that's basically in a nutshell Mission Atlantic. I want to spend a few words about the tools that we will develop, because some of them, they are not only focusing on the Atlantic. Actually, most of the modeling that we will do, it's global. We will have global ocean models at relatively high resolution, but across all the trophic levels. So from the bacteria to the plankton and fish. Sorry for my phone ringing. And we will also have the fish population performed in these models, and we will have these 4 climate scenarios. And going from 1980 to 2050. The case studies are mapped here in this dark green or brown almost. These are the one directly addressed in Mission Atlantic. Some of these lines are some of the seagoing activities that we will have. I want to stress the fact that we will use new type of technologies like wave gliders with a payload that is quite specific in terms of acoustic collections, acoustic data collection. This first time probably that this type of payload is mounted on a wave glider for such a long distance, because we will go from the Azores to the Ascension Island, and then from Ascension Island to the South Brazilian shelf, touching upon the Cabo Frio and also the beautiful island of Florianopolis that was introduced before. But we will have other activities. We will have in Santa Helena divers going and collecting banting communities. We will have a dedicated flagship cruise in Brazil together with the Ministry of Defense there. We have a lot of activities, and we would like to open it up to all the partners in the All Atlantic Research Alliance here. So if you are interested, please contact us. One of the main goals actually is to make these socio-ecological networks, or socio-ecological graphs. So understanding how the human activities, what are the stressors that they produce or the pressures, and how these pressures are affecting the different ecosystem components. To do that, we also have ideas in terms of a new type of artificial neural network to be developed on the data that we will produce in the model, and identify maybe new type of indicators. We will also have ensemble modeling, so running several type of models, also including management strategy evaluation models, and try to produce an envelope. And that envelope could be the safe operating space where the human activities can be safely developed. And that's basically what Mission Atlantic is. And of course, here is some context, because we are new on the stage. We are still waiting for the website. Probably we will launch it in a few days, mid of December, most likely. It's a huge partnership, and very enthusiastic partners, I have to say, from South Africa. Sambi was presented before, and the University of Cape Town. From Brazil, we have University of Florianopolis, the University of São Paulo. I think one slide was missing about the capacity building, and I'm sorry for that, because we also have a strong partnership with the World Maritime University, where we are launching for this year as a pilot some fellowship related to integrated ecosystem assessment that is directly integrated in the Master of Sustainable Ocean Governance and Management. So
thank you.
Please reach us out, and we will give you more information about all these initiatives.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Patrizio, for sharing your very in-depth plan with us. And I see that some of the speakers that have been here, some of your collaborators, and they are saying they look forward to working with you, and they look forward to the collaboration, Patrizio. Thank you very much for that. And I will move on now to Atlantico with Danielle Ludicone and Kelly Goodwin.
Yes, hello. Hi, everyone. Good morning, good evening. I will have Kelly introducing the first part. because this is going to be a duo with presenting first the Our Microbiome Initiative and then the Atlantico project. So Kelly, are you there?
Thanks. You can go to the next slide.
Kelly Goodwin from NOAA, US.
You put it in presentation mode, I think.
Sorry.
Great. Thank you. The Atlantic Ocean Research Alliance Marine Microbiome Roadmap was released in February 2020, which I know feels like a universe ago, last time we met. And in recognition of the importance of the marine microbiome to understand and sustain ocean ecosystems and the benefits they provide to society. The marine microbiome is at the heart of the living ocean. Although viruses, bacteria, phytoplankton, etc. are tiny, they hold large benefits. Microbiomes are the foundation of food webs and critical biogeochemical cycles, including those involved in climate regulation. This hidden treasure is being revealed through advances in omics technologies. Benefits include a largely untapped resource in terms of biodiscovery, the bioeconomy, and development of a sustainable food supply, which we heard a little bit about from the Aquavita program. Combining the strengths of government, academia, and industry and aligning objectives and incentives will help advance microbiome research and mature its application across sectors. The vision of the Marine Microbiome Roadmap is to spark fascination and to demonstrate the socio-economic value of the Atlantic's marine microbiome. The roadmap is organized along 3 pillars and a set of cross-cutting challenges. Next slide, please. Cross-cutting actions include shared and cooperative practices, leverage infrastructure, and research and development that is ethical and fair. The environment and climate pillar lays out actions to map, characterize, and to parameterize microbiomes, which allows ecosystem understanding to be modeled and turned into predictions or forecasts. Understanding can be transitioned into solutions with examples such as pollution cleanup or carbon uptake. The Atlantico project will help implement the Marine Microbiome Roadmap, and my partner Daniele will give you a brief overview of Atlantico.
Very much, Kelly. So yes, the Atlantico project, I'm Daniele Iudicone, coordinator of this New Age 2020 project that is supposed to implement the Belém statement and to contribute to implement. It's entirely dedicated to the microbiome. So the aim of this project, composed by 36 partners from Europe, Brazil, and South Africa, is to have a novel holistic framework to manage the ecosystem health and services by introducing new tools like genomics and optic data to approaches to the monitored environment. It's also to engage with science, industry, policy, and citizens, and build a shared capacity. So we occupy a sort of niche in the project landscapes because we are really going to focus on the microbiome. So the microbiome is this invisible majority of the oceans made of viruses, bacteria, phytoplankton, microalgae, and small animals. And we are going to introduce new approaches to this assessment and understanding and prediction of the microbiome status. So we are also going to focus on the microplastics and the distribution of microplastics, and above all on the microbiome living on the microplastics, because it determines the toxicity and the fate of microplastics itself. Thirdly, we are going to see how currents spread around microbes and pollutants across all the Atlantic Ocean to have a better understanding of how to manage it. We are on new protocols for monitoring the status and the health of the microbiome, the ocean microbiome, by introducing routinely genomics. And also we are going to have 5 case studies to bridge with applications. Case studies will bridge, for instance, to the production of new crops for cultivation in case of salinification of soils due to the increase of sea level in the future, down to collaborate with the NGOs, with the other sister projects on aquaculture, sustainability, but also on policies. Finally, I want to mention that we want to have a strong legacy, not only in terms of a new huge data set that will be available for the blue economy, but also to connecting infrastructure to have really a long legacy in the future after the project. And for doing that, we are organized in terms of a hub and nodes approach, which means connecting infrastructure in Europe, and notably EMBRC and sequencing centers, together with the equivalent in Brazil and South Africa. And we are already organizing the share of standardized protocols. And we hope in the future to have nodes in the United States and Canada to really have a network that is going to be to last in the future. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much to you both for that presentation and sharing all of your plans with us. I'm going to move right along. I'm a bit out of time now, so I'm going to move right along to SoCIC with Jean-Baptiste Saleh and Sarah Nicholson. Perfect. Oops.
Hi, Jalil. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. You were on presentation mode and it reverted back.
Yeah. Because I needed to switch my mic on, but that's now in Sorbonne University in Paris, in France. And I'm the scientific coordinator of SoCIC, which is H2020 that get Europe and South Africa. And today I've got the great pleasure to present in duo with Sarah Nicholson. So I should take over after my overall introduction. So SoCIC stands for Southern Ocean Carbon and Heat Impact on Climate. So we've got really a regional focus on the Southern Ocean, and in particular on the Southern Atlantic basin. So really, SoCIC fits perfectly in all Atlantic Research Alliance by being this basically the southern end of this big Atlantic basin. So I'd like to give a brief overall introduction on why we should care at all about Southern Ocean, and in particular the carbon and heat of the Southern Ocean when we're interested in climate. So the reason why we do care is that Southern Ocean, and in particular the carbon and heat of the Southern Ocean, are a huge climate regulator that are still poorly understood and represented in climate models. So just to give you some blunt fact and numbers, Southern Ocean represents up to 50% of all the carbon dioxide and up to 75% of all the heat that is absorbed by the world oceans. So it's really a major pump for carbon and heat that pump it from the atmosphere to the ocean that we need to understand. For instance, if we are interested in some of the key policy relevant questions, basically questions that relate greenhouse gas emission to atmospheric warming, that's a very big question nowadays in the policy area. Basically, we wonder how much greenhouse gas we can emit to reach an atmospheric warming of 1.5 or 2 degrees in the context of the Paris Agreement. To address that question, we crucially need to understand where the sinks, and in particular, how much of this heat and carbon is drained by the Southern Ocean. And so I now hand over to Sarah. Sarah, you're around to give a bit more details on the processes of the Southern Ocean and what we do in SoCIC.
Could you go to the next slide, please, JB?
Sure.
So we're showing here a map of the surface temperature trend over the past 50 years, where you have red regions that indicate warming. And this map is ready to bring home the point that JB mentioned about Southern Ocean heat uptake. So what you'll see is the pronounced contrast in the response of the ocean to atmospheric warming between the Southern Ocean and the rest of the global ocean. where you to this drainage of heat that JB was mentioning. And this is due to the Southern Ocean's role in excess heat uptake as it's increasing. So while the drainage of heat that you see in this map seems to be regionally constrained to the Southern Ocean, it is indeed of global relevance. Next slide, please, JB. Next.
Is it working?
No. Oh, yes, sorry.
Yeah.
This is because the Southern Ocean forms a central part of the global ocean circulation. And as such, changes that are occurring in the Southern Ocean have a far-reaching impact. So the schematic that we're showing on this slide here not only emphasizes the interconnectedness of the Southern Ocean, but it also highlights the centrality of the Southern Ocean and the global ocean circulation. It also highlights, importantly, the vertical layers of the Southern Ocean. So you see the red arrows here are the surface currents, and the blue are the deep ocean interior currents. And it highlights the important role of the Southern Ocean for this vertical layering of the global circulation. So an estimated 65% of all of the global deep ocean waters, which are being brought up to the surface water in the Southern Ocean, are being exposed to the atmosphere for the first time. And these waters are then being modified by the atmosphere. And there's an exchanges of heat and gases that are occurring in this region. And then they're being brought back down to ocean depths, where this modified water is remaining for very long periods of time. And so changes that are occurring in the Southern Ocean really do have long-term impacts on the globe. So it's really important to understand this part of the ocean. Importantly, the Atlantic Ocean basin forms a key role in the global exchange that we see here. The important aspect here is that it's linking these two polar systems together. Next slide, please. So the overall objective of SOCIC is to really try and understand and quantify the variability of heat and carbon in the Southern Ocean. And in doing so, it hopes to contribute towards improved estimates and improved constraints in global budgets of carbon and heat, and improved constraints or improved estimates of the future projections in CO2 and heat. So the SOCIC project investigates these different processes, atmosphere, ocean, and sea ice, using a combination of different observational platforms and different numerical modeling approaches. So some of these observational platforms, which you can see on the slide, is things like autonomous vehicles, such as gliders and sail drones. And both the observations and numerical modeling are following a hierarchical approach. So it's really about setting up experiments to understand the processes and moving from beyond the processes to really understanding system scale changes and through long-term monitoring observations, and also through working towards Earth system modeling. And then this is ready to try and understand how these processes impact, how are they relevant for climate. So as South African partners, we have an important part in this project, particularly but not exclusively through our involvement in both in numerical modeling development and also strategic observational planning. But moreover, as we have a strong scientific knowledge base in the South Atlantic, we've been working in this region for quite some time. And this is where our proposed observations are going to be carried out. And so while there are many different aspects of the observations, the main cruise that we are going to be having, which will be on the SA Gullis 2, which hopefully will be taking place 2021, 2022. We'll have to see if COVID behaves. And that will be in the South Atlantic. Next slide, please. Yeah, so that's mostly about the, sorry, this is very sciencey, but if you'd like to find out more about the specific work packages in SOCIC, please visit the website. And if you have any, there's a lot of news updates on the Twitter feed. And yeah, thank you very much for your time and allowing this opportunity to present SOCIC.
Thank you. Thank you so much to you both, Sarah and JB, for that presentation on the amazing work that you guys are doing. Very fascinating tools that you guys are using to monitor as well. I think they're really cool. And then the last project that we're going to hear from today is from Nicole Debo from the EU PolarNet project.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Talila, for this introduction. I will bring you now to the cold and icy areas of our planet and give you a short introduction what EU PolarNet does and what we might be able to do for the All-Atlantic Ocean Research Alliance. I will be fast since I am the last speaker today. So why are the poles important for the Atlantic Ocean? I think if you see this figure on the right of the Atlantic Ocean, of the Atlantic meridional overturning circulation, it's self-explanatory. It shows that the Atlantic is strongly connected with the Arctic Ocean and also the Southern Ocean, as we nicely heard in the socio-economic presentation just before my talk. And I also added, to stress this even a bit more, a figure from the IPCC special report on the ocean and cryosphere in a changing climate on this slide on the right-hand side to show you the effects of the changing Atlantic meridional overturning circulation, the effects it would have on the land surrounding the Atlantic Ocean, on the poles, and also on the ocean itself. So a lot of changes would happen if, for example, these overturning circulation would weaken. And the poles, as I said before, are two of the key elements, or key elements influencing the circulation so on in the Atlantic Ocean, and vice versa, the Arctic and also the Southern Ocean heavily depend on the Atlantic. EU PolarNet, what is EU PolarNet? EU PolarNet is a bit different than the projects you have heard before in this evening session. It's a coordination and support action. That means we are implemented to advise the European Commission and to support the European Commission in all issues related to the polar regions. So we are not doing actively research, but we are doing research planning. EU PolarNet has just, EU PolarNet 2, which I'm speaking about now, has just started 2 months ago, but we have already a 5-year history with EU PolarNet 1. And I will show you in a minute some of our highlights from EU PolarNet 1, which might be interesting for you also. Consortium of expertise and infrastructure in polar research. It consists of 25 partners and includes all European states, member states, and associated countries which run large polar programs or sufficient polar programs. In addition, some important polar international organizations are also members of the consortium, like, for example, the Arctic Monitoring and Assessment Program, the International Center for Reindeer Husbandry, the World Ocean Council, and as our main partner, the European Polar Board. That means also that we can connect the members of the All-Atlantic Ocean Research Alliance with all European polar partners in polar research. Our ambition in the new project is that we would like to establish a sustainable and inclusive platform to co-develop and advance European polar research actions. So we will do significant polar research planning. And we will use this also to give evidence-based advice to policy-making processes. We did this successfully in the last 5 years, and we will even strengthen this in the future. And our major goal is that we would like to sustain the network and the platform then later on in a European Polar Coordination Office, which will continue to work after the project funding has ended. So to give you, I heard today, let's say it like this, several times the word co-designing, and this is exactly what we have done in the last 5 years and what we will do in the 4 upcoming years. So, and our major output from the first 5 years of the project was the Integrated European Polar Research Program, which was in fact co-designed from the beginning on with all the stakeholders which are relevant for the polar regions. And how did we do this? So we started with getting a baseline overview of what the nations who do polar research in the Arctic and in the Antarctic are interested in. And we went through 154 polar strategies, not only from European partners, but from all over the world. We distilled the most important topics, and then we went into a 5-year stakeholder dialogue. So we had online consultations and up to 52 meetings with stakeholders to find out what are really their needs when it comes to polar research. And we clustered these in this very complicated figure here on the right-hand side. And we ended up with 6 overarching research priorities. And based on that, we, together with our stakeholders, wrote an integrated European polar research program, which is just published and available on our website. This polar research program, of course, includes also a lot of ocean research recommendations. We also worked heavily on infrastructure. So polar research is really difficult from a logistic point of view and very expensive. So our attempt has to be really to join forces when it comes to operation and also to infrastructures. And just as a side note, the vessel, which is here on the figure, the Polarstern, is a frequent guest in Cape Town. And I guess some of you have very often seen it because Cape Town is the logistic hub for Polarstern when it goes to the southern hemisphere, to the Antarctic. We compiled all our information of all European infrastructures in both poles, so ships, camps, laboratories, shelters, vessels, stations, aircraft, in a European Polar Infrastructure Catalogue, and developed also a data bank which is continuously updated. And this data bank is hosted by our major partner, the European Polar Board. You can access this, and when you want to work in the polar areas or in the polar oceans, you can see which vessels are working there or which stations are accessible. And finally, also a couple of months ago, we came out with a white paper on European polar infrastructure access and interoperability, which provides recommendation how to improve the access to the polar infrastructures, but also to its interoperability. And it includes also an implementation plan for the Polar Research Program. And finally, EU PolarNet is also coordinating the EU Polar Cluster. And so Schick, which just presented beforehand, is one of the members of the EU Polar Cluster. This is a cluster of 21 European-funded polar projects. And we have joined our forces in many areas, like, for example, stakeholder engagement or joint policy advice or joint communication. And I put this slide up also to show you that you can engage with all of these projects via contacting us. And we would be very, very happy if we can make connection to those who are relevant to your work which you want to perform. So thank you very much for your attendance and looking forward to future cooperation.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Nicole, for sharing with us all that amazing work that you're doing, that you will do towards bridging the gap that is socio-economic development, particularly contributing to it using the ocean and the research and innovation from the ocean. Thank you so much for that contribution. We have come to the end of a very insightful day of conversation that I have thoroughly enjoyed. I've enjoyed spending my time with you and hope that you have enjoyed yourselves too. I have learned today a great deal and hope you too have learned a great deal. And of course, I'm really inspired. I'm really inspired hearing about the multidisciplinarity approach, the inclusion of communities and the inclusion of people and human capital development to ensure that nobody is left behind in the impact and the contributions that can be made from the data that is generated out of the research and the innovation or innovative outputs of the All Atlantic Ocean Research Forum and Alliance. Thank you so much to all of the speakers. You guys were delightful. Your presentations were beautiful. And people in on our social media platforms that are streaming live via Facebook and those that are streaming via YouTube, thank you for staying with us. It's been a long day. To the 227 participants that are still here on Zoom, thank you very much for joining us, and we see you again tomorrow. But before we leave, I think there is an announcement that I'd like to make about the first international symposium in human health and the ocean in a changing world that is currently going on and started actually 7 minutes ago. And there's the advert or the flyer for it on your screen now. And the link to it as well is going to be, oh, they've just put it into the chat now. Thank you, Laura. So if you would like to encourage you to join that conversation. And with that, from my side, I see you tomorrow at the same time. Tulile Kanyile is signing out all the way from Johannesburg, South Africa. Thank you so much. You've been a great audience. Goodbye.